Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
If subsistence hunting, trapping, and fishing are important to you, please consider applying for one of the open seats on your Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council. These seats will be filled by rural Alaskans who are knowledgeable about fish and wildlife subsistence in their region. Apply by Friday, January 29th, 2016. Information at 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to the Monday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is December 28th, 2015. As we head into the last week of the year, we do have an active weather pattern for you, so stay tuned, and we're going to be talking about the public warnings and watches in just a moment. But when we're not here, you can always grab our watches, warnings, and advisories by going to www.arh.noaa.gov. You can also get our weather off our information line by calling 1-800-472-0391. And as always, you should check out our Facebook and Twitter pages. Also on YouTube, go to AKwx and look for our program after we're finished here tonight. That'll be recorded for you. Now, as we look at the headlines for this week, you're going to see we have another powerful storm system bringing high winds, and that's going to be coming in Tuesday night into Wednesday, with the strongest winds coming in during the day, early hours on Wednesday. Now, blowing snow is occurring now across the northern areas of the Bering, and we have some blizzard conditions out in that direction. We have snow that continues across South Central and also across the western areas of the state. Now, look for the winds, like I said, to increase Tuesday night into Wednesday, and we're expecting possibly record-breaking numbers across the Alaska Range through the passes. Now, taking a look at the conditions across the state, we have some watches in orange. The yellow colors are the advisories, and the most important in effect now are the warnings in red. So here's the blizzard conditions along the Bering Strait, including St. Lawrence Island, and that's going to be continuing through tomorrow for conditions reducing visibilities to near zero. Winds are going to be out of the east direction between 20 to 40 miles per hour with higher gusts up to 60 miles per hour. We also have some advisories out here for winter weather. As they receive snow, they were expecting storm totals between 4 and 6 inches. We have snow continuing mainly from Talkeetna north across the Susitna Valley, and we're expecting that to continue through the early morning hours on Tuesday. Now, taking a look here for the west, areas in orange across Bristol Bay and also across the eastern areas of the Kenai Peninsula, including the Turnagain Arm area and Portage Valley. We have a high wind watch out for these areas Tuesday evening through Wednesday, as a strong system is going to be coming up in that direction, increasing winds. We also have high wind warnings out and another watch for the interior locations and along the Alaska Range and north to the Delta Junction. Expecting winds here out of the south and east directions. We're expecting winds between 40 and 60 miles per hour with higher gusts up to 80 miles per hour, but stay tuned as the Alaska Range may be updating for stronger winds. Now, what do we have out there currently? Well, we have a low pressure system, that upper level system just kind of skirting into the southern areas of the Bering, and this is the system that we're going to be keeping an eye on as we have a low pressure system that's going to be coming due north towards the Alaska Peninsula, very similar to what we had several days ago, bringing strong winds across the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. A break in between systems as we had a front push inland across south central and was extending from just north of the Kenai across the Anchorage Bowl and back towards the Kuskokwim Valley. A line of rain and snow, mainly snow to the north of the boundary and rain showers just to the south. So putting this into motion, you can see that's advancing towards the north, bringing a large moisture plume just to the north slope this afternoon, with warmer temperatures surging up along southerly flow. Across the southeast as well, they have a swath of moisture pushing inland there, brings some scattered rain showers along the eastern areas of the Gulf with snow just inland. Taking a look at your surface map from earlier today, here's the weak boundary. It's just kind of staying along the eastern areas of the Gulf waters with a very tight pressure gradient, high pressure sitting just off to the east. The snow was occurring just across the inner channels and north towards Haines, and then we had some snow mainly across the Susitna Valley this afternoon and some late rain shower activity along the southwest, with snow just to the north across the Yukon Valley and the upper Yukon valleys and the middle Koyukuk. Now looking at the western areas, we have this low pressure system which was quite impressive at 958 millibars, but this is kind of a weakened system that it has brought to the north, and we have some snow showers across the north and western areas of the Bering, mainly rain along the Alaska Peninsula and elsewhere across the Aleutian chain. Now the next system that's going to be coming up is going to be moving in after this one. This one's going to continue a little bit further north, pushing the rain further inland and bringing these warmer temperatures on southerly flow, deep southerly flow from the North Pacific. We'll see snow mainly across the northern areas as the cold air mass stays just to the north of the Kuskokwim Valley. However, along the Gulf areas, we'll see a mix of rain and snow as the temperatures cool down to near freezing. So mainly light precipitation across this weakening boundary all the way through the southeastern areas, mainly very little trace accumulations expected except for that Susitna Valley area and mainly from Talkeetna north. However, they are hovering near freezing, so we might see some snow accumulations just south of Talkeetna up to 1 inch. Across the northern areas of the state, just mainly light snow showers as that weak boundary makes it to the north. And then as we head into your Tuesday, this is when that low pressure system starts coming up from the north, initially a 965 millibar. You can see the pressure gradient on the leading edge of this front is going to be very strong, so we'll get some easterly gusts as this front makes its way to the north, especially across Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and Bristol Bay. So be on the lookout for also increased gradient across the southern areas of the state. That'll keep winds kind of gusty there for the Turnagain Arm. They did observe high winds earlier today. However, the winds won't be as gusty until this next system comes to the north. Now on Tuesday, that warm front will stall just across the northern slope areas, with gusty winds continuing out of the easterly direction with this low pressure making its way to the north. And then snow will primarily be from north of St. Matthew Island. Along the backside of this low pressure system, mainly a north to westerly flow out of the range of 20 to 40 miles per hour. So not too bad for the Tuesday forecast for much of the Bering into Wednesday. The main focus is going to be on this next low pressure system. It's going to be quite the impressive storm system as it nears Nunivak Island and just north. The gradient becomes very tight all across south central and the Bristol Bay area. So be on the lookout for those winds to start coming up Tuesday night and impacting the area through Wednesday. The Alaska Range will be under those high wind warnings and watches all the way towards the coast. Expect gusty conditions, so that area across the Bering Strait might see a prolonged time frame for the blizzard warning that they have out there. Across the southeast, also expecting those winds to come up out of the south direction, with some rain just pulling across the eastern Gulf there, with snow just inland and across the northern channels. As we look at your temperatures today, it did get quite warm. We had 45 at Middleton Island and Shignick along the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, the Gulf waters saw temperatures in the mid-30s to lower 40s with mid-30s across the southeast. Across the interior, just seeing temperatures slowly creeping up into the single digits to the middle teens. And then across the northern coast, still warmer than the last few days with temperatures still below zero at -10 to -15 degrees, mainly across towards the Seward Peninsula, where it started warming up quite drastically into the 20-degree range. Now across the southwest, warm temperatures there in the mid to upper 30s, all the way through the Alaska Peninsula and much of the Bering in the mid-30s. Across the western areas, pretty much uniform with temperatures in the mid-30s. For your temperatures overnight, temperatures will maintain across the Bering for the most part, holding in the mid-30s to upper 30s and across the southwest as well. Coolest temperatures will be across the interior with Arctic Village seeing near -30 degrees and the coastal areas to the north and west seeing 10 to 20 below zero. The southeast will drop down into the mid-20s tonight, and across the interior areas of south central, we'll see temperatures minus to -10 degrees, and then across the southwest, it'll climb there in the lower 30s. Across the Kenai, also staying in the 30s, and then climbing across much of the state, especially the interior locations, finally seeing a break in the mid-20s. Across the north and western areas, still below zero, however, not far below zero. And then across the southeast, temperatures will be in the mid-30s, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, also seeing temperatures there across the western Gulf locations in the lower 40s and mid-30s across much of the Bering. Looking at your flying conditions tomorrow, we'll see IFR to MVFR widespread across the western coastal areas and much of the Bering, with IFR conditions also across the Kenai and across much areas of south central, mainly in the morning time and improving during the afternoon. And then also IFR as this next system begins to lift from the North Pacific. Looking at your passes in more depth, IFR at Anatuvik and also Adigan Pass, the southwest locations like Clark and Merrill Pass, and also Rainy Pass will be IFR. Looking at Windy, we'll see IFR improve later, possibly in the day. Isabel will go from IFR to MVFR, and we'll see Mentasta go from IFR to MVFR. So Tanita will mostly be MVFR through the day tomorrow, and Portage will stay down to IFR. We'll see Chilkoot and White Pass, both IFR through the day tomorrow. Looking at your freezing levels for tomorrow, they're hugging just across the southeast and north to the Susitna Valley, just south of Talkeetna, and back towards Nunivak Island and the northern areas of the Bering before dropping further to the south. We have your 2,000 to 6,000 foot levels just along the southwestern areas of the state into the Gulf waters. Now your icing, you should be concerned tomorrow across the northern half of the Bering, and then also below 6,000 feet as you head towards the southeast and wrap around to the Panhandle. Some light icing is also possible from the north slope and down towards the Kenai Peninsula. Out west, mainly along the backside of this low pressure system, but not as severe conditions. Now the low pressure system across the Bering is a large, broad trough in the jet stream, with the jet streak peaking around 170 well south of the chain. But this is the amplified pattern that's going to help this low pressure system deepen in the next few days. Looking at the 9,000 foot level for Tuesday, we have between 40 to 70 knots across the southwestern areas of the state, all out of the south direction, and then changing direction out of the southwest as you head towards the north. Lighter flow across the southeast for your 9,000 foot winds, and then on the backside of this low pressure system, between 20 to 35 knots out of the west and northwest. Tomorrow, we're going to see identical winds at the 3,000 foot level, change direction around the Bering, and then the strongest winds will be across the Alaska Peninsula, through the west coast between 50 and 65 knots. Out of the west across the northern areas of the state between 30 and 45 knots, with a peaking across the eastern Beaufort seacoast there, and lighter winds across the southeast. Looking at your turbulence, wrapping these maps up, the main concerns are going to be across the eastern areas, the Bering, with widespread conditions across much of the southwest, and just to the north, we'll see that below 4,000 feet, mainly with below 6,000 feet across the western areas of the Gulf and the Alaska Peninsula. Areas will be lighter conditions where that ridging is setting off to the southeast. Now in just a minute, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary O'Connor with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, and I also manage the Aviation Safety Program at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health here in Anchorage. Thanks to Alaska Public Media for having us, and thanks to our viewers for watching. This evening, we are happy to have as our guest Samantha Case. Sam is a student at the University of Alaska in Anchorage, and she's working on her master's degree in public health. And she also works at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in the Commercial Fishing Safety Program. In full disclosure, she's also my coworker. Welcome to Hangar Flying, Sam.
Thank you.
Now, you just successfully defended your thesis. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Can you tell us about the topic that you chose for your study?
Yes. So I was really interested in looking at non-fatal injuries in aviation. So this is something that really hasn't been studied before in Alaska. There's some limited literature out there, but we don't really know too much about the types of injuries that are seen. So that was something I was very interested in, and that's what my study was.
So where did you get your information for the study, and what type of data did you use?
So all the data came from the Alaska Trauma Registry, and that's this really robust database that collects information from all the acute care hospitals in the state since 1991. And it's anyone who is affected by a traumatic injury like a fracture or dislocation, poisoning even, their clinical data are put into this database.
And what type of workers did you look at?
I looked at any aviation worker. So that's pilots and flight attendants, ground crew, but also avionics technicians and dispatchers, really anybody who is involved in the safe departure of a flight.
Good. What cases or types of injured workers did you find? How many?
Yeah, so it was focused between 2000 and 2013, and in that time period, 117 cases of non-fatal injuries were identified.
Wow. Can you tell us about the workers that were injured? What about their demographics?
Yeah, absolutely. So overwhelmingly, most were male at 89% and white at 85%. And age really ranged from 20 to 76 years with a median of 42 years of age.
Wow. I guess that's not surprising that most cases involve men, but that is a pretty high number for the highest aged person.
Yes.
So that's a little bit surprising. So I imagine that the type of injuries were very different. So how did you go about this study? How did you divide up the injuries or look at different cases?
Yeah, so they were really divided up between, if the injuries were caused from a crash or not. So that's how they were divided.
Okay, and let's start with crashes then. What did you find with those injuries?
So there were 28 crash-related injuries, and not surprisingly, they were mostly pilots who were injured. About 2/3 suffered fractures when we look at injury types from the crashes. And what was surprising to me was that about 1/3 suffered traumatic brain injury from the crashes.
Wow, that's pretty significant. I will be very interested in talking to you in a little bit about what we can do to prevent that, because traumatic brain injuries can be lifelong problems.
Absolutely.
With some serious long-term effects. So with the non-crash related injuries. What did you see there?
So the remaining 89 cases were not related to a crash, and these were caused by a variety of things. What really stood out to me was that over half were from falls, and when we look at falls a little more in depth, a lot of them were falls from the aircraft, such as mechanics working on the wing, or slips on ice. And we saw, mechanics, pilots, and baggage and cargo handlers really had the highest number of injuries when looking at occupational groups.
Oh, wow. So your study included all kinds of workers and looked at falls with, say, flight attendants that were working on an airplane that may have experienced turbulence.
Yes.
So you included that as well?
Yes.
And the overexertions, I imagine, would be a lot of cargo and baggage handlers?
Yes. The overexertion was the second leading cause of injury, but it only counted for 11 of the 89 injuries that we had. And overexertion was from lifting, pulling, pushing, throwing, mostly baggage and cargo, and that really affected all occupational groups because, as we know, in Alaska and small operations, they kind of share duties.
Exactly. Well, Sam, we're running out of time and we're going to have to end our conversation here, but we will look forward to having you back on our next program and hearing about some prevention efforts that we might be able to look forward to in the future when we come back to hangar flying.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your support. Until next time, fly safely.
Welcome back to the show. We'll start off with our ice edge, and that's still hugging the southwestern coastal areas and on across just south of the St. Lawrence Island. And looking through the next few days here, we're expecting this ice edge to work its way a little bit further to the southwest, while the ice edge to the south of Nunivak Island may retreat just a little bit as we have those warmer temperatures surging to the north with the next low pressure system. However, Cook Inlet should stay about the same, and looking further to your southeast, we'll look into Tuesday's forecasts. We'll see mainly lighter conditions across the inner channels around 15 knots out of the southeast direction mainly, and seas will be around 3 feet, and looking at the outer waters between 25 to 35 knots, strongest winds here just off of Sitka. Looking at seas across the outer waters between 12 and 16 feet. And then as we head into your day on Wednesday, expect the winds to be on the increase out of the southeasterly direction. Looking across the inner channels, seas will be between 5 and 7 feet, and the seas will be between 25 to 27 feet across those outer waters. So gale criteria for the outer waters with mainly small craft across the inner channels. Now for your Tuesday forecast across the Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet out of the southeast around 15 knots, stronger winds across the western areas of the Gulf, gales to the further south, and then higher gusts also across the Shelikof Strait and the southern Cook Inlet, all out of the southeast direction across here, and then we'll see seas between 8 to 15 feet to the south of the Cook Inlet. We'll see seas also 10 feet across Shelikof Strait, seas across the western areas of the Gulf between 12 and 19 feet. As we head into your Wednesday forecast, once again, stronger winds on this day with the higher gusts across much of the Gulf waters and across the inlet, Shelikof Strait. Expect gale criteria across all of the area, and then we'll see more of an easterly direction across the northern inlet, becoming more southerly as you head to the south. Seas on this day will be around 8 to 9 feet across the northern inlet and Prince William Sound, and between 25 to 28 feet across the western areas of the Gulf, and between 10 and 15 feet across the southern Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait. Now the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow will see winds between 30 to 40 knots out of the south and southeast directions. Higher gusts across the area, especially late on Tuesday. Seas 9 to 13 feet across the Bering side, and the Pacific will see between 20 to 22 feet. Now your Wednesday forecast, very strong winds on this day, storm force for Bristol Bay, all out of the south and southwest direction, and then seas on this day will be between 14 to 15 feet Bering side, 23 to 30 feet on the North Pacific side. Same thing for the Aleutians, small craft across the area with a little bit stronger winds as you head towards the eastern Aleutians there, out of the south and western direction until you get towards the western Aleutians out of the northwest. And seas on this day will be roughly between 12 to 15 feet across the Bering side, and then on the Pacific side between 20 and 25 feet. Stronger winds expected for your Wednesday forecast, mainly out of the west direction, heading towards the eastern Aleutians, more southerly direction. And then the Bering will see between 8 to 15 feet with the seas on Wednesday and between 15 to 20 feet on the Pacific side. Now looking at your Tuesday forecast across the west coast, we'll see winds here changing direction from northeast to southeast direction between 35 to 40 knots, except towards the central areas of the Bering where it'll be around 25 knots. Seas in ice-free waters will be between 10 and 14 feet. On your Wednesday forecast, more of a northerly flow from St. Lawrence and north, and more of a south to southwesterly flow to the south. Storm force winds early in the day will become lighter during the latter half of the day, and then we'll see seas between 8 to 15 feet. Now on your north coastal areas, look for the strongest winds towards Kotzebue Sound out of the northeast, gale force there, and then lighter speeds across towards the Beaufort Seacoast. On your Wednesday, expect stronger winds on this day across the area between 15 to 30 knots, and then they'll all be out of the east to northeast direction. Just a quick recap of your forecast. After gusty winds today, we'll see winds beginning to taper off slightly during the overnight hours, however, continuing across the western coast with a little break across the southeast and the south central areas for your Tuesday, with the big system coming in on Wednesday, bring those gusty winds back to the area. Have a good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If you're a rural Alaskan resident, consider applying for a seat on one of the Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Councils by Friday, January 29, 2016. Applicants who have knowledge of the regional subsistence uses, customs, and traditions are needed. Council meetings serve as a forum for regional public involvement in subsistence management. Information at 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov.